welcome back to my channel. So today's video is honestly an extremely heartbreaking one, and it's got a lot of crazy twists and turns to it, so just kind of sit back and prepare yourself and go at everything with an open mind. Today's video is on Jabez Spann. Jabez Spann was 14 years old when he went missing on September 4th of 2017 from Sarasota, Florida. He was known as a great and loyal friend, and he was quite the star athlete. He was known for being incredibly talented when it came to football. Despite having two siblings that seemed to get in trouble frequently with the law, as well as his mother who had a run-in a few times, he vowed to not be a part of any sort of criminal activity, and he mainly focused on his school, his future career, and being a football player. He had things he wanted to accomplish, and he wasn't going to make some of the same decisions that he saw his loved ones make that ended them in a bad situation. I want to note that there's kind of a co-parenting situation going on. His mother was in jail. His grandmother ended up having full custody and raising him from an infant on. And when his mom got out of jail, she wasn't completely out of his life. She was very much in his life, and she worked very hard alongside his grandmother to provide him the best possible situation they both could together, but he maintained his home at his grandmother's house from what I've seen. He was last seen outside of his grandmother's house on the 1500th block of 23rd Street in Sarasota. He was there for a Labor Day barbecue. He seemed a bit off that day according to his grandmother. She wasn't really sure if maybe he was just having a bad day, if he wasn't having a fun time at the barbecue, or maybe something was bothering him. But I find it very important to note that that same day he had actually gone to a candlelight vigil for someone who had recently been murdered, and I will get into that a little bit further in the video. His grandmother saw him cross the street from their home at about 5:30 p.m. that day and assumed he was going to a friend's house to stay the night. However, when he never showed back home the next morning and she realized he never even went to school, which was incredibly unlike him, she started calling him frantically over and over and over again, but each time it would just ring and Jabez never answered. So she decided to call Jabez's mother as well as the cops. Now, his mother immediately sprung into action and stayed up for over 24 hours, desperately trying to figure out what happened to her son. She searched, asked people, called anyone she could, but no one knew anything, they claimed, and Jabez still never came home. I have seen a few sources say that a child had actually never gone missing from Sarasota before. I don't know if that's true, but I did see it on multiple sites. Because of the circumstances, they were not able to put out an Amber Alert. Again, we know how infuriated I get with the Amber Alert and how it just leaves out so many people that still need help, but they still were able to file some sort of missing child alert. While he was independent and spent a lot of time with friends and practicing football, he was never one to skip school. He had never done it before in his entire life, and he also always called someone to let them know where he was or if he was running late. So they pretty much immediately knew something was very wrong from the beginning. It wasn't a case of, oh, he might have run away. It was, no, something is so incredibly wrong. They decided to ping his cell phone, and it immediately took them to a park that was not that far away from their home, but it was an industrial park, and it was rough terrain. I've seen some video footage from searches, and despite helicopters and dogs and many people on foot going through all of this kind of like marshland, and there was little tiny ponds and grass and birds and trees. It was just horrible to go through. I also noticed that in the area, because it was actually an industrial park, there were huge trash cans and dumpsters, and unfortunately that would have been an ideal place to dump a body, But that being said, they got onto their search pretty quickly from what I saw, and I feel like they would have found him had he been dumped in maybe one of those trash cans. However, there were specific areas that Chief DePino of Sarasota wanted to search, but unfortunately they were on private property, and without probable cause they had no access, which meant a couple of key places went unsearched. So they decided to go in as hard as they could to try to spread the word. Like we know, exposure is absolutely everything in missing persons cases, and especially seeing a 14-year-old kind of wandering around on their own, that's something you would notice, something you would remember. So they started putting up missing posters everywhere they possibly could. They put his face all over social media. They even went as far as doing automated phone calls to alert a lot of people in the area about his disappearance and to ask for information.
Police aren't working alone. 11 community-led search parties have gone out looking for clues.
We've been looking in the water, we've been looking behind woods, we've been looking in alleys, we've been looking everywhere.
Friends and families went door to door with flyers begging anyone to speak up if they knew what happened to him or where he was. A 14-year-old doesn't simply just vanish on their own. Someone had to have known something. And then something devastating happened. Hurricane Irma hit the coast of Florida and washed away, more than likely, some of the only bits of evidence of what might have happened to Jabez. Also, as soon as Irma hit was the last time his phone ever sent off a ping signal. Now this to me says that the phone was on the ground somewhere where it flooded. That doesn't really say a lot of good things. But they kept searching. No one was going to give up. No one was going to give in. This is something that did not happen in their area, and they weren't going to allow it to happen. And then one night in October, when they were closing up a search, they were approached by a man who offered to help. And when they informed him that they were all done for the day, he said that he had information that could help them and that he knows why Jabez went missing.
The search and investigation for 14-year-old Jabez Spann continues, and according to new court documents, Spann may have witnessed a homicide a week before his disappearance.
A week before Jabez disappeared, on August 28th, there was a man that was shot just feet away from his grandmother's house.
According to an affidavit in the case of 55-year-old Reginald Parker, Spann may have witnessed the murder of 33-year-old Travis Combs, who was shot and killed in late August. Parker also admitted that he saw Spann exit a residence at the time of the murder and yell, "Oh my God, y'all shot him."
The man that was shot was a man named Travis Combs, and the man who claimed he was a witness alongside Jabez was 55-year-old Reginald Parker. Now, Parker said after this man was shot, one man took his car, drove off, and the other two fled on foot. Now, he swears up and down that he saw Jabez outside witnessing this and swears he heard Jabez say this. But apparently Jabez went to his grandmother after all this happened and swore as well that he never saw anything. To be safe, on November 1st, Parker went to the police station and finally admitted this himself to the police and gave his witness statement. Now, it had been 2 months since this murder happened. I think over 2 months, almost 3 months actually. And this man decided to go to the family instead of the police first, which was kind of a red flag to a few people. And he even told police that he had told 3, possibly more other people about him witnessing this murder before coming forward. A couple of these people came in and signed a deposition letter, said that Parker told them exactly what he had told the police. There was only one person though that could confirm that Jabez was seen by Parker. There was even one man that claimed that Parker told him that the 3 men that murdered Combs approached him and said, "Give it up," and Combs replied with, "I ain't got it." Now, so far we have like this base story and then 2 people who are telling like more extended versions of the story. But on November 7th, Parker was arrested. He was a known sex offender, and he for some reason vacated a home and never told police, which is what he was illegally supposed to do. But then when he was arrested, he decided to change his story completely to never having seen this murder, period.
Okay, and that same affidavit says that Parker later recanted his statements and is now not cooperating with police.
He denied everything, obviously infuriated Jabez Spann's family because this was their one person that possibly gave them a motive as to why someone would have taken or possibly murdered Jabez. Now, his family then came forward and said that Parker even told them specifically that they wouldn't like where they found Jabez and they wouldn't like the state he was in. And he apparently even went on to describe injuries that Jabez had sustained to his face. So this man kind of went from being, oh, I want to help you, I know that he saw it, to, oh, well, I know where his body is and you're not going to like it when you find it, to denying absolutely everything. Because of this, Parker was soon after charged with accessory to murder after the fact in the murder of Combs. According to police and private investigators, there are actually a few more witnesses that came forward and claimed to know more about the disappearance of Jabez and the murder of Combs, but now every single one of them has backed out because of the fear of being labeled a snitch and having something happen to them. This 100% basically ruled out to anyone that he just ran away. As we already know, he had no reason to. He had great grades. You know, he loved school, loved football, loved his family. He was going places. He wouldn't just give that up, and he had never even skipped school or considered the idea of running away for any sort of reason. His family was infuriated because the whole community they were in is so tight-knit. Everyone's either related or they've known each other most of their life. But the grandmother says that not a lot of them got along and no one really had another person's back, pretty much. I can't believe that the community would still rather have a kidnapper and a murderer among them than a snitch. Despite having a $50,000 reward out for information on Jabez, no one's coming forward. And you guys, that's terrifying. There's already one man that's put in jail that might know more or might have something to do with one, if not both, of these cases, and people are still too scared. $50,000 untouched is never ever a good sign, especially when there were so many witnesses that came forward at first that knew things and people just backed out. That makes you wonder who is out there that they're so scared of, and maybe how many people are out there that they are so scared of, and this person is using insane manipulation and fear to scare people into not talking.
All we want is whoever took him, just call the police station and just tell them where he at. We just want him back. If we get him back, then my family could have at least some closure and you could deal with the people later.
There apparently is a pastor named Kelvin Lumpkin, and somehow he ties into this case. And I'm very interested to see what you guys think about this particular person. Lumpkin was contacted by prosecutors that wanted to ask him questions about the murder that happened in August and possibly a link between that and the disappearance of Jabez. They believe that he might have information on both. But Sarasota's mayor, that also runs a law firm, then sent the prosecutors a letter saying that she represented Lumpkin, and if they tried to interview him, he would just invoke his pastoral privilege and not answer their questions. Now, I already know, you can speak to a pastor in confidence, or, the head of any church in confidence, and most of the time, obviously, as I said, it's confidential. However, I didn't know there are actually legal limits to that as well. I personally had no idea. When I was researching up on this alone, I found that most of the time, the only time they're required to say anything legally about what someone told them is if child endangerment is involved. And I feel like this is one of those times. A 14-year-old, a child, someone not a legal adult has gone missing, but somehow he's still using this. I don't know. I just found it very interesting and kind of irritating, and it just sits with me very weird. The mayor then wrote, and I'm going to quote, "Every communication that my client received regarding the matter of Jabez Spann occurred within the confines of his position as a pastor and occurred in a confidential manner." So this makes it seem like the pastor was for sure told something about Jabez. That's what the lawyer even went on to say. The pastor actually came forward and said that he was never directly told anything about Jabez. Since then, the mayor cannot be reached, will not comment on absolutely anything, and the family, again, is extremely upset about this. Something crazy is happening in the community, but the mayor won't even speak to the family. The mayor hasn't stopped by their home. Nothing really is coming from the mayor besides her extreme devotion to keeping this pastor quiet.
Corinne Stanish will retire from her post as captain of the Sarasota Police Criminal Investigation Division this spring and wants to resolve the city's first ever missing child case before she does. Her message to those responsible:
we're going to find you, and we're not going to stop until we get our hands on you and get the justice and find out where Jabez is.
On December 13th, they celebrated Jabez's 15th birthday without him. They hung up his jersey in the grandmother's front yard where, as far as I know, it still hangs, waiting for him to come home. The Sarasota Police Department constantly checks in on the family, especially the grandmother, and gives updates as soon as they possibly can. His grandmother and mother and aunt, everyone is just so incredibly distraught because they all say they know how the streets work. His grandmother said, and I quote, "I'd rather know the bad than go to bed another night not knowing. Just bring him home, and if he's already dead, just let me bury him beside his granddaddy." They just want answers. At this point, they know their community and they know that someone knows something and is just letting them suffer. You know, we all know that though. We all know that someone out there who commits these horrible crimes and takes these people or murders these people, they know something and they are just letting these families suffer and suffer and suffer. And I think what's hurting them the most is that they know that it's not just a random act, that it's not probably just a stranger, but someone they've known for a while and someone that is in the community. And imagine knowing you're living with a monster. So now we're going to get into the theories, and obviously the biggest one is that he witnessed this murder. Whoever committed the murder knows that he witnessed it and they wanted him gone. From what I've seen, and I wasn't again able to 100% confirm this, but the murder happened around 9 p.m. at night. So obviously it would have been incredibly dark outside. The men that killed Combs obviously were focusing on killing someone, demanding something from him. But unfortunately, if someone heard him vocalize his shock to what happened, they probably did panic and look over their shoulder. And even if they couldn't see Jabez in the darkness, they recognized a male voice and they probably remembered the house, which leads me honestly to believe that someone had been watching his home, or at least Jabez in general, after this. The candlelight vigil that he had gone to on the night that he disappeared was the candlelight vigil for Combs. Again, the community was very, very tight-knit. Everyone knew each other. But I honestly wonder if whoever killed him showed up to the vigil, maybe to see if Jabez looked like he was freaking out and gonna say something. He, again, probably saw the three people and could describe who they were. It's very likely that he knew exactly who they were, and that's why he didn't go to police sooner, and that's why he told his grandmother he didn't see anything. Imagine seeing someone you might have grown up around murdering another man right in front of you. I'm sure that's a hard thing to swallow. But again, if it was someone from the community, no one would question why they were there at the vigil. No one would assume that someone who murdered someone would show up to these things. But if they were trying to make sure Jabez was going to stay quiet, I wouldn't put it past him. So I am so interested to know if anyone who showed up to the vigil was acting strange or behaving oddly. I think though, honestly, that at some point, whoever murdered Combs might have threatened Jabez, or he saw them somewhere because he was acting strangely that night. That could have been the fact that him witnessing a murder was weighing on his mind, or maybe he was scared. Maybe someone threatened him, like I said. Maybe someone showed up to the vigil to try to intimidate him into being quiet. I think that's a very, very likely theory. He walked off from his grandmother's house. Maybe he was just trying to get away and process his own emotions and figure out what he wanted to do, but unfortunately, it was a perfect time to be snatched up by someone. But then at the same time, because he so willingly walked off and put himself in a line of possible danger, that could rule out the fact that someone was threatening him or showed up to the vigil. Maybe he thought he was fine, it was just weighing on him. I feel like if you feel threatened in that sort of way, and if someone had threatened you, you wouldn't openly walk off by yourself. We have to keep in mind though that we're relying very heavily on a statement from a man who is already a criminal, who didn't report witnessing the murder for over 3 months, and who then ended up taking everything back. You know, you really need to wonder about his credibility and his statement, and not that he's necessarily lying, but maybe that he knows a lot more. At first, he claimed that Jabez was just witnessing the murder there alongside him, but then for some reason he went to his family and said, you won't like where you find him, you won't like what has been done to him. How would he know that unless he was a part of that? It really makes you question his involvement in everything. When he was arrested, he took back everything. If he was involved, maybe he thought he could pull off acting like a witness. And when he realized he was arrested and it was possible that he could be pinned down and seen as possibly someone who committed either of these crimes, maybe he panicked and tried to take everything back. Or was he just making everything up just for the hell of it? But how would that benefit him is my only question. Then we have the pastor who might know something, and this is honestly the strangest part of everything to me. Like the pastor said, he was open about the fact that no one directly mentioned anything about Jabez, but he never denied someone telling him something in general about the murder, or that there was a witness and something might have happened to them. If no one said the word Jabez, you can say that it technically wasn't directly about him. Someone said, oh, there was a witness, and then it comes out later that Jabez might have been a witness. You can kind of see why police might have connected two and two together. When it comes to the pastor, there are quite a few possibilities. Someone who committed the murder could have come forward to the pastor and confessed. They could have said what they did, asked for guidance, asked for forgiveness, maybe help on how to deal with the situation. Maybe they said that they dug their hole even deeper because someone witnessed the murder and they had to in turn do something about that person. When it comes to criminals, it's one thing to kill and do something to a grown man or a grown woman, but it is something completely different to commit a crime against a child. Even in prison, child offenders and, child murderers, and they're all cast out and they are attacked and torn to shreds. So maybe this person murdered this man, and that's something that they can deal with. But when they realized they would have to do something to keep a child quiet, maybe it weighed on them. Maybe they had to go to this pastor because they couldn't deal with it anymore. Maybe Parker came forward to the pastor and said that he witnessed something along with another person that he didn't state but could have possibly been Jabez, and he asked how to go forward with it. He maybe was nervous about, again, being a snitch and telling on someone, and maybe that's what led him to later on go and speak to the family. Maybe speaking to this pastor, the pastor was like, okay, well, start where you're most comfortable. Go to the family first, and then once you see what they say, go to police. In my mind, that makes a lot of sense. However, the one hang up I have on this is that if that was the case, it was already public knowledge at that point. Police had confirmed that Jabez was a possible witness, that this Parker man was a witness, so why would the pastor need a lawyer and try to hide something that was already public knowledge? When it comes to these laws and confidentiality with pastors and different heads of churches, they aren't allowed to say anything unless the person that said something to them allows it. And since he said something on his own, Parker said something on his own, why would the pastor not be able to speak on that? That makes me think that that theory is nowhere near as likely as the first one. But then you also have to consider the fact that, again, tight-knit community, word of mouth. Maybe someone didn't witness anything, doesn't know exactly what happened, but they heard something and it was distressing enough to go and talk to their pastor about it. We already know the entire community is still terrified because 50K is just sitting untouched. Maybe the one place that they felt safe was in church and with their pastor. If this was the case though, again, word of mouth is like telephone. Things can change. There was even, rumors spreading before Parker came forward that Jabez had witnessed the murder. I mean, word was spreading about all kinds of different things that happened. So the fact that the mayor seems pretty intensely protecting this man, I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right with this. Police zoned into the pastor as having possible information, but to me, they wouldn't know that unless someone told them. And because of confidentiality, the pastor can't go and tell people when he's heard something, so that means the only people who would know are the pastor who can't speak and the person who told them. From what we know, the only person 100% proven to have had information was Parker, which again would mean maybe Parker told them when he went into the police station that he had spoken to the pastor first. All of this makes me think that the reason they went after the pastor is because Parker maybe brought him up and said that he had gone to the pastor first, and maybe they were going after the pastor because Parker stopped talking. Maybe they just went and tried to ask him things because people tell pastors stuff like that. You know, there's just so many possibilities, like I said before, but I keep coming back around to the pastor and Parker. Parker is one of the largest reasons, if not the only reason, we even have this much information. And it's still possible, you know, that he walked off from his grandmother's house and fell victim of another crime. He didn't live just feet away from where the murder happened, so it would be kind of crazy if it was just a coincidence that a week later, on the night of the vigil of the man that was murdered, someone who witnessed it went missing. While I know he told his grandmother he didn't witness anything, I'm sure he did not want to involve himself in a criminal investigation slash murder, even as a witness. It is never ever good on the streets to be labeled as a snitch, and he had managed to keep his record clean, to keep his life positive.
He was a lot to deal with, but he was never a criminal. That's one thing I can say about him.
And on top of that, he was probably terrified. Someone killed this man in front of his home, and they were still out rampant. You know, he might have been horrified that they would come after him. He's just this 14-year-old kid. And unfortunately, I think that's what happened. I am interested to see what you guys think down below. This family just wants to bring him home, no matter what happened to him. If someone hurt him, if he's just out there somewhere after possibly being murdered, or if someone has held him captive. You know, he again isn't a kid who would run away, so unfortunately I just see the worst possible outcome, which I don't like to say, and I try to be so optimistic, but it's just kind of scary to think about the reality of it all, the fact that everyone is almost 100% positive he would never run away, and the only things, you know, that are possibilities are the fact that he witnessed a murder, and that is a pretty huge motive for hurting someone. So I hope for the best, but I'm honestly very, very scared for Jabez. I am scared for his family. I am scared of the outcome. But at this point, his family has said they just want answers. They just want something. Someone in the community knows something and they're not speaking, which leads me into my next point. There is a Crime Stoppers Anonymous tip line. Crime Stoppers, you can be 100% anonymous all the time, and I feel like not enough people know this. There is a portion where you have to fill some stuff out, but you can choose the option where you remain anonymous, and if you give them something that takes them to Jabez or any other person you might be sending a tip into, if your tip leads them to the right place, they directly wire the money to your bank account. No questions asked. They will not try to find you. They will not try to ask you more questions. It is anonymous, you guys. If you are in the community and you know something and you are just so scared someone's going to come after you, you can do something. Don't think you can't. I know it's terrifying, but you can be anonymous and no one will ever know. You will get the money and the family will get their loved one back. And that is so much more important than anything else. I also have all the links and numbers down below to others you can contact with information. My thoughts go out to all of his loved ones who are missing him right now and having to go to bed at night wondering where he is and what happened to him. On that note, guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. Please don't forget to leave a thumbs up on this video. Spread his face everywhere you can. Spread his stories. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to become a member of the family so we can try to help bring these people home together. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Never be much faster. Before you came round, I was ready to slow down. Before you came